Welcome back to Friar Talk, everyone. Hope your day is going well. Today, we're going to discuss whether or not the Padres should be buyers or sellers at the deadline. And I think it's an interesting discussion because I don't think there's a clear answer in this. I see a lot of people talking about the Padres have to sell. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're too far out. You're 6 games out of a wild card right now. You're also 6 games out of the second wild card, and you're only 6.5 out of the first wild card. So everyone's pretty neck and neck. And then there's like this second tier beneath like the Reds, the D-backs, the Giants, the Phillies, the Marlins. And then right after that, a few games behind is the Cubs, the Padres, and the Mets. And they're kind of slated like back, but they still have a chance to make a run. But I see a lot of people saying like, hey, there's no reason you have to sell. You have to trade Hader and Snell. And I disagree with that. I want to put that out first off. I do think trading Hader makes a lot of sense, but why would you not want Snell a part of this team for the future? You go back and you look at some of these contract extensions, and I mean, we've been talking about this a lot. I feel like this is kind of everyone's kind of like almost panic button is like you extended Cronenworth instead of Kim, and you extended Yu Darvish instead of Blake Snell, and those look really bad right now. You are hoping that Ha-seong Kim and Blake Snell are part of the future. Like, you don't want to trade those guys. You want to extend them. You want them to be on your team for a lot longer. So I think it's really interesting, but I don't think the Padres should be like outright sellers. But I'm also not opposed for them to like take a step back and try to reset a little bit. But Chase, what are you thinking about this? Do you think buying? I mean, like, where's your thought on what the Padres should do at this deadline?
I think maybe like we were talking about it often, like maybe flipping Hater and then using what you get from Hater to potentially buy on some candidates to straighten up the team, either for, hey, we know what, we are going to make a run, but we can't re-sign Hater. He's going to be too expensive. The closing market is kind of screwed up because of Edwin Diaz and the whole injury, so no one knows what any top end reliever is going to get. So how about this? You flip Hater, use whatever we get from him either to solidify the team now as maybe we get a couple mid-tier relievers, or hell, we get another DH and sort of just solidify the team for this year and the years to come, and then just worry about re-signing Kim and Snell, or just, I wouldn't say stand pat. You definitely should sell Hater, but you don't have to just sell. You could potentially buy low on some candidates and hope to fix them. I mean, we have Ruben Niebla. We've seen him work his magic on certain guys. Um, I'm one for selling Blake Snell, but at the same time, you kind of need him. He's an ace caliber pitcher. He's having a Cy Young caliber year. Would be very, very valuable as a rental, and he would get a significant haul. Especially if you could package Snell and Hader together, you could get a significant haul, but then you give up hopes on extending both of them, where your best pitching prospects are still more than a few years away, and then you would be riding with Darvish, Musgrove. Can't rely on Martinez, so you kind of need Snell. You don't know where Lugo's going to be at. You don't know where Walker's going to be at. They both had their injuries this year, so it's kind of like, okay, well, you're relying on having Snell. So I think you could potentially sell some guys. I I wouldn't go into a full sell or a full buy. My worst fear is that AJ Preller is on the hot seat and they're just not making it known, and that Preller goes out and tries to buy his way to a championship, screwing over the farm system, screwing over the Padres' future, and possibly just capsizing the team.
Yeah, I'm terrified of that as well. I feel like everyone is kind of starting to get like that because like last year's deadline, I don't want to say it was like, oh, it was like there were bad moves made necessarily. I don't think that was the case. I thought it was actually a really good buy. I mean, Padres ended up having a deep playoff run. A couple things, change up, and maybe they make the World Series because that Philly series was a little bit odd. A couple games that were kind of blown, I would say, with the Clev Mania game, of course, and then Bryce Harper's super clutch home run to kind of win the series, and that was at Game 5. But I think it's interesting that you say this is with Blake Snell, you're talking about how he could be worth a lot. And I think that's a huge factor in this too, because we're going to see some starters probably get traded before Snell. If Snell gets traded, there are probably going to be a couple starters traded before to kind of gauge the market. Why? Because Blake Snell's probably the best guy on the market. Now, I know like who is it? Verlander's potentially on the market. The difference is like Verlander's on a huge contract and he's super old, where like Snell's in a different spot where he's a rental. He's like the best rental available. And that's a valuable thing. So it also interests me because Chase, you brought this up, and I kind of disagree but like I get where you're coming from. Like I get both sides of it. But you're saying if you move these guys, you don't have the same chance of like bringing them back. Something that would be really crazy is if you traded Blake Snell as a rental and then brought him back in the open market, which I don't think that's off the table. We saw that with Rollins Chapman a few years back, where like he leaves and then he comes back. I think it was he left. He got traded from the Yankees and then went back to the Yankees, right? Is that correct? I think that's what
I don't
happened.
remember.
Yeah, I just remember that he was a guy that
Well,
was like
Lance
moved
Lynn
maybe
might
back.
be coming off the market. I just saw a report saying that the Rangers are close to acquiring him as of right now.
Yeah, so there's the first guy, and they're gonna be okay. This is the prospect capital. So okay, well, what is Blake Snell worth in comparison to that? And I think that's something that's very interesting because that's gonna like basically dictate it, and that's why I don't think the Padres should be in this full sell or full buy. I also think trading Kim and Soto, since they're free agents after next year, I think that is off the table. Because if what you said, if you think AJ Preller is on the hot seat, and I think that very well could be true, why in the world, if you're going to fire him, would you have him trade these guys away? And they're your most valuable players. I mean, Ha-seong Kim has had, when guys typically come from the KBO, it goes year 1, year 2, year 3 of this like jump. Look at his running OPS, Chase. Did you see that graph of Kim's running OPS?
I
It's like this.
witnessed
Woo.
it.
It's perfect. I guess a different way for anyone watching, but it's just like increasingly going up the whole time. It's beautiful. So I don't want those guys traded. I think that trading like blowing it up in that sense is stupid. You look at where the Padres are struggling, and it's like right now, starters, they have great starters. Problem is there's not a lot of control on these guys, and one of the two guys that they have locked up, and Darvish, he's had a really bad year. He's really struggling, and you just extended him, and you have a lot of money tied to him. So that's one thing that's rough. The bullpen, it's not necessarily the back end guys. Like we know Suarez has the injury question marks. Cosgrove's been good. Wilson's been good. Hader, of course, has been extremely dominant. It's the middle tiered guys. Those guys are easy to acquire. You look at the offensive production. The worst offensive production right now is coming from first base and DH, where your best offensive production should be coming from. Trent Grisham's had a
And
good year.
most money.
Yes, exactly. So that's the problem where it's like it's little things that are really like holding the Padres down right now. So you look at it as like, yeah, trade Hader, stack up your bullpen, get some middle relief guys, kick Suarez to the closer role. You can improve the bullpen by getting rid of Josh Hader. Josh Hader's pitched 37 innings this year? Yeah, he's a great closer, but he's more of like a guy you want in the playoffs. We saw that. Like having him go out there and pitch, an inning every night in the playoffs is a huge deal. So I think it's really interesting when you're looking at it from like that side where it's like, okay, think about how many innings a bullpen pitches. 37 is not eating up that many innings. Like a couple years ago, Craig Stammen, I want to say he almost went to 100 innings. Then he had like 90 or 110 out of the bullpen. Like those are the guys that's where the Padres are really struggling. So you can improve that pretty easily by trading low-end prospects, flipping Hader, trading part of those prospects. I mean, not like the exact guys, but part of your prospect capital that you gain from a Josh Hader trade, put it back in the bullpen, get a couple guys with some control, and you're looking a lot better. And then also, you got to do something better at first base and DH. I mean, I love Jay Cronenworth, but like he is struggling right now. I saw some stuff about like his work ethic still being insane and him like really wanting to win and being like frustrated because he feels like he hasn't changed anything. He's just struggling. And it sucks. But like at the end of the day, you got to produce. If you're not producing, like maybe you have to move into kind of a depth infielder role for a while. And I think that's super fair because it's been a while where he's been struggling now. And last season wasn't that great of a season for him either. So it's you go and you trade for a couple power bats, you dump Carpenter because there's literally no point in having him. We saw last night, we're recording this before the Pirates day game on Wednesday. Last night, what did they do, Chase? They got Gary Sanchez and Luis Campusano in the lineup. Do that more.
And it worked.
Campy needs at bats. Yeah, Campy. Yeah, didn't Gary have 3 RBI? 3 hits, 3 RBIs, I want to say, and a home run. So you need both of those guys in the lineup because Gary Sanchez is actually like a kind of formidable hitter, and he's been great behind the plate, which is I did not think that was going to be the case. But if you move Campy to DH sometimes and you kind of change it up like that, that's all right. But you need to at least add one power bat, and I think you can do this stuff and kind of do like a little adjust at the deadline, and I think it'll be really good. But anything else you're thinking for kind of the Padres strategy this trade deadline?
No, but I am gonna mention it because I think we were talking about it yesterday or the day before. Apparently, Will Myers was in San Diego and he met with AJ Preller and Seidler. So, hey, hopefully my boy's back. He could bring a resurgence. He's a power bat. He might be able to, be a platoon first baseman with Jake Cronenworth, and I think that might work dividends just because, hey, Cronenworth against lefties isn't the greatest. So having Will right there and then having Cronenworth focus on righties, you play to both of their strengths. They're both going to give you solid defense at first base. It's not really a drop off in the defense area if you switch between each other, and then it gives you a little bit more power at first base.
And it's kind of like a little band-aid solution. I don't think that's that bad of an idea either. But yeah, it always is fun to talk about Will Myers, right? But it's also I was thinking about this earlier today. So do you remember like last year when the Padres Will Myers was banged up for a while. They bring him back, right? He's kind of playing first base DH. They also have Brendan Drury. They also have Josh Bell. And interesting, like everyone like was shitting on Josh Bell, even though like his numbers were like slightly below Brandon Drury's, just because Drury had more home runs. But like Drury's numbers weren't that great in San Diego. I don't think people realize that. But the offensive production was like very below average for like both those guys. And it was seen like the Padres didn't really have a good option at first base and DH. Dude, do you know how much better that has been than this year? It's not even close.
100%.
It's not close. So I think that there's
Isn't
little things you
Cronenworth's
can do.
OPS sitting in the 600s?
Dude, I think it's like
If
six.
not the
I don't
low
even know.
600s?
I think it might be below 650. Let me look it up right as we talk right here. I know he came in later in the game yesterday.
I think it was like 611 last time I looked at it.
No, 656. But he's only hitting 208. He's only hitting 208, and he's been awful with runners in scoring position. So it's like, God. Hey,
Dude,
but
he's
our
not
guy.
even above 300, or he's not even above a 600 OPS in his last 30.
Oh my
He's
goodness.
at
Yeah,
a
see,
598 in his last 30.
that
Maybe
is
that's what I was looking at in his last 30 games.
yeah, that makes sense. And that's kind of tells you like, dude, it's time to like adjust. Like it really is. So maybe it's a Will Myers Band-Aid or something like that. I mean, I would prefer something a little bit better if you are going to actually try to make a run, because even though it feels like this team is not like really in the thick of it, you win six, and that's the problem. They haven't done this, but you win 6 games in a row, and all of a sudden you're like 2-3 games back of 1 or 2 of these wild card spots, and it's like, okay, now you're in the thick of it. Like you really are. So and you have a bunch of games against the teams ahead of you. So it's like I don't think that like selling or giving up. That's why I'm not sure about trading Blake Snell, but I do think there needs to be adjustments made, and the roster needs to look different after the deadline. I would have preferred them to make some moves a month ago, just small moves, because it's not working. But we're here. We're almost to the trade deadline, so we'll see what they do. But let us know your thoughts. Do you want the Padres to buy? Do you want them to sell? What's your strategy at the deadline if you're AJ Preller and the San Diego Padres? Because I think there's a lot of ways to go about it. And if there's anyone that you want us to talk about, I don't know when we're going to be recording next, but send in any guys that you want us to talk about, because we've talked about quite a few different players. Talked about trading everyone. Talked about like literally breaking all the guys down of who could get traded. But I think that's probably going to do it. So let us know your thoughts, and we'll talk to y'all soon.